We will call our Revenue Study Committee meeting to order at 9:00 a.m. on today, February the 19th. We will start by letting each department that's present, would you like to present anything to us before we go over our findings of the different committees that were sent out on last month? With that being said, or not said, we will start with Mr. Paul. He is responsible for, the minutes. I apologize, thank you.
Yeah.
The minutes from last month, January 15 meeting. Everyone had opportunity to read. Any corrections? If not, we need a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve them.
Second.
The motion has been made and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Minutes approved. Now we will review and discuss revenue findings.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I was tasked with looking into court fees around the county, and I have to say a big thank you to Ms. Vicki McClinton, who did a great job putting together all the information from the fees that are available for the superior courts, the magistrate courts, and the probate courts in this county, and comparing them to other counties, and also looking into all of the state statutes that kind of mandate a lot of those fees. And what we ran into is that most of the fees from the courts, whether it's the clerk's office, filing fees, what have you, is all set by state statute, so we don't really have leeway to change those. The other bulk of the revenue that comes in on the court side is all the revenue sharing for the operations of the courts, which currently, in terms of the superior courts, is split up according to county population. So that's really not something that can be touched. If that was to be increased, that's something that would kind of have to be handled by the county commission, the judges. I think the judges kind of handle that at this point in time, going around to the different county commissions and getting an increase approved, but that's not something we can do just in Glynn County on our own. And there were some very small fees in juvenile court that had recently been adjusted upward, but the conclusion that we kind of came to is that there's really not anything that would make a significant revenue difference for the county if we were to increase any of those fees, that we're probably best off looking into a different area and kind of leaving the court fees as is, just because there's so little leeway we have that would actually make a difference on the budget, that the time and effort might best be spent elsewhere. And and in saying that, again, I want to thank Ms. McClinton, because she did a lot of the legwork here, really helped out on this, but unfortunately there's just not a lot here for the county to increase in terms of revenue.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions to Paul or to Ms. McClinton? If not, we'll move on to Brother Ed Farley.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like Lisa to come up. She's going to be walking through the report. I have a few introductory comments. It was an absolute pleasure working with Lisa. Hopefully I can continue to do some work with you in this area, and your team, who are sitting over here, did absolutely a great job. We had three meetings and really got into the depths of things. I went around and visited all the major parks with you and Ray, and it was just a tremendous experience to go through it, and hopefully we've come up with some great recommendations. And what we tried to do is, the first part is a cover letter that Lisa will start out with, that sort of compares where we are with some of the other like counties and national averages, and I think that's pretty good news. And then the second part is the actual recommendations, and we broke them into several areas. One, increased costs were needed without hardship to participants. I think it's important, before we get too far into this, this is an area that it's one thing to only look at raising costs, but you really need to make sure where the costs are fair. And there are some areas that we looked at where we can reduce costs and build more participation. So I use the example because I used to fly a lot. It's like when a plane flies with a lot of empty seats, let's put some programs together to fill some of those seats, because you're really not changing your fixed costs any, which you understand that process. So we took a look at that. So decreased costs where we can build higher participation and thus revenues. And this process is an ongoing process we should do every year to take a look at where we are. Another one, number 3, is introduce new activities, including sports and special events, to drive participation. The world is changing, and one of the things when we met with Catherine and Alan Hours, that we looked at the demographics, and there are a lot of retirees moving into the county. So we often think of park and recreation just for kids. It's for all ages, all either guests or residents of the county. So it's important to keep up with the times and how things change. And then we came with a few of the out-of-the-box ideas that Lisa and I will share with you all. I think they're, because I thought of them, and Lisa did, we think they're pretty good. But I think there's some great things there, and there are a few other that we're waiting for legal and a couple of other groups to come back to us with, and we'll include those in a subsequent meeting when we get resolved on those. So let me introduce Lisa Arganis, and thank you again for all your help, and I'll add in as we go through the report. But if you could walk the committee through it, that would be great.
Sounds good. Yes, thanks, Ed, and we really did enjoy working with Ed. We did meet 3 times and toured parks and had good conversations and lots of emails and back and forth over the last month since this group met, so really appreciate the time he's invested in this to help us. I would like to just kind of briefly introduce the team that also met with us too. So, Assistant Director Ray Kaysen, Recreation Program Manager Tiffany Brain, she's over athletics. Ray's been here over 20 years, Tiffany's been here over 15, and then Administrative Assistant Sandra Tyndall, and Sandra's been here 7, seems like longer. But these folks, the 4 of us met with Ed on multiple occasions, so I just want to acknowledge their input and their help with that. So.
Thank you.
But yes, as Ed mentioned, so the start of this is just a cover letter that just kind of reiterates that these are preliminary findings. These are just some preliminary things for you guys to consider as you guys continue to look at the fees and charges in the county, and that in doing our meetings, we did consider the mission and purpose of this committee to do what y'all were charged to do. We researched some national data related to Recreation and Parks agencies and utilized the National Recreation and Park Association's 2019 Agency Performance Review. This is just a kind of one of those little flyers they put together so you could kind of print out. But the big takeaways from this that we thought we wanted to bring to your attention was the revenue to operating expenditures ratio percentage. Kind of the national average is around 27.3%, and that's revenues to operating expenditures. Our department is roughly 28%, so we are kind of right in line with the revenues that we generate compared to our operating expenditures, and that's what you'll see in a lot of recreation parks agencies, because this is viewed by a lot of folks as a service to the community, a quality of life component to the county, and so being a money-making venture is generally not how most people view parks and recreation. So, and that's definitely not how I view it. Although I do think it's important that a department provide fees that cover costs to offer specific programs, but you cannot put price tags on things like playgrounds or trails or lifeguards on the beach. You just don't. So. But I do think by being around 28% with our current budget that we are right in line with what the national average is. Another interesting piece of information is the per capita expense for operating, and that's in the second paragraph on that cover letter, where the national average is around $78.69 per year capita. Glynn County, our department is around $53.18 per year. Population trends is another thing we looked at during this process, because we just thought that we wanted just to kind of see, a lot of the folks that we currently serve mainly through our youth athletics programs are, our kids 5 to 14. So we wanted to kind of see what's that demographic looking like in our county, and are we touching all the kids that we can be touching with our programs, and not literally, but reaching them and getting them in our programs. And I thought that it was interesting that, although Glynn County's population has estimated to be increased since this 2010 census. The population estimate for youth age 5 to 14, which is the primary target for our youth athletic programs specifically, has decreased by about 2,000 kids from 2010 to the 2017 estimate. And this was an estimate based on the American Community Survey. So I think it's pretty good data. We'll see what happens when the 2020 census comes out, but it's pretty good data. But what's interesting is although there has been that reduction in the number of kids in that age category, our participation numbers in youth athletics has risen several hundred over the last couple of years, and that's pretty good when you consider that the number of kids in that population have decreased. So just wanted to point that out. That really kind of takes us through the cover letter, and I think the second page talks about the four main areas that were looked at and considered to be presented today. So I'll go through some of those. If I start getting a little too down in the weeds and y'all don't want to get that low in the weeds, y'all just tell me it's good and we can move on. So.
You're doing great so far. Okay. Thank you.
Well, the first thing was increasing costs where needed without hardship to participants, because we have a unique community where you have folks in different areas that in different income levels and such. So we want to make sure that the fees that we charge are comparable. And we put together the fee information. I think we gave that to all you guys. I know we for sure talked about it with Ed. And as far as what our most of our fees are for services for the programs we offer, we felt like for the most part everything was in line. And I do believe several years ago, before I came on board with the county, there was an across-the-board 20% fee increase for youth athletic programs. That was several years ago. We feel like those fees are in good shape. Last year, we implemented a fee increase for some services at Blythe Island Regional Park. And so for that reason, we are constantly looking at fees and making sure that we're in line with that. But so some of the fees that if we had not taken some of those steps in the last couple of years, might need to be looked at. But for now, we think they're pretty good. But one of the things that came to light during conversations with staff and with Ed was one of the rental fees at Selden Park. It's kind of the park ground fee, and it's pretty cheap. So we do have a recommendation on the table to possibly increase that park ground rental fee. And basically that's somebody that comes, or a group that comes in and wants to rent what they consider to be the entire park. So if they get all the pavilions, the gym, the ball fields, all of that, right now it's about $700, and so the recommendation was to increase that. And we don't have a ton of those, but there are some groups that do like to rent every single space and have a big event. So recommendations for increasing that and increasing the deposit that goes along with that. And so that's kind of outlined in item number A. Item B talks about an open gym membership for Selden Park, establishing that. We have 2 gymnasiums that the county has opened, or really that you can play basketball in, I guess, too. There's a third one at Howard Coffin, but it's not really suitable for basketball. But Selden Park is open during the day. It's the epitome of a true recreation center. It really is. And during the day, at certain times of the year especially, there are a lot of folks that come down there to play open gym basketball during the day. There's also some opportunities in the evening outside of our youth basketball season. And so staff's, bringing to the forefront the possibility of establishing an open gym membership fee, whether it's a drop-in fee that's established for each sport, whether it's basketball, volleyball, or ping pong, or whether there's a membership fee that people can pay for per month. And that might generate a little revenue coming in to help, especially at Selden Park. There's not a lot of revenue that comes in from that other than rentals, so trying to because when those folks come in, anybody that comes in, they're going to use toilet paper, they're going to use, your lights, your air conditioning, this stuff like that. So, and a lot of recreation and parks agencies do charge open gym memberships for adults, especially not youth, but for adults to come in and play ball instead of just having it for a free for all. So that's an opportunity for some revenue. The third item, item C, in 2021 is when we kind of talked about the possibility of looking at a 5% across-the-board fee increase for some of the things that we recently did in the last couple of years, whether it's Blythe Island Park campground and pavilion fees, athletic fees, fees associated with county athletic tournaments, things like that, because we just made some of those adjustments recently. So in 2021, or if the committee thinks, well, we'll look at 2022, or whenever that time period is, but that's the initial recommendations. Let's look at that in another year or so. Item number 2 talks about decreasing costs where we can build higher participation and thus revenues. The item A talks about mini golf. We do have a nice mini golf facility on St. Simon's. The fees right now are $8 for anybody to play, and what the group came to look at was the possibility of decreasing. Revenue studies and finance don't generally like to hear decreases, but the goal of decreasing the fee for youth at a certain age, 12 and under, to participate in the mini golf and pay admission fees, keeping the adult fee the same and 13 and up the same, but decreasing that from $8 to $6, again, in the hopes of attracting that family that may not be able to afford 4 people at $8 each, but just a couple of dollars less might generate additional people being able to come out and participate at mini golf. So that was the recommendation that came forward. And when we looked at mini golf fees, the admission fees across the board, some of them were $7, some were $6. So keeping the adult fee at $8 and then reducing the youth fee, again, focusing on trying to get more youth to come out and participate in parks and stuff, and make it more affordable for families that maybe couldn't if the fees were full price. The second idea under decreasing costs was the possibility of establishing a family discount. The recommendation, the initial recommendation is maybe a 10% family discount, being that when a family comes in to sign up multiple children for a youth athletic program, the first child has to pay full price, and then the second child, third child, fourth child comes in maybe and pays a discounted rate of 10%. We're not married to 10%. It's just a number. It's just something that was thrown out there that we've seen in some other areas. But you could also look at a specific dollar amount. You could say a $5 discount for the second, third, and fourth child. You could say a 20% discount. It could be multiple. But it's very sad sometimes when we have people come into our building and they may have 3 or 4 children with them to sign up, and even though our fees are very reasonably priced, for some families, it's a challenge and a struggle, and they have to look at their little children and say, well, you two can do this, but you two will have to wait till next season to do something, and that's very sad. So possibly implementing a family discount that would allow a family the ability to enroll all of their children in the program, and thus, get more kids in the program, get more children playing, and maybe get those kids that maybe couldn't play otherwise. So, we have to establish a policy, guidelines, restrictions of how that would work, but that's usually a pretty simple thing, and again, that's something that other recreation and parks agencies do have in place. Not all of them, but some of them do, and I think it works really well in some communities. Area number 3 is introducing new activities such as sports and special events to just drive participation. And the goal here is really to just increase facility utilization and getting more people out into our programs, not necessarily so much the revenue generation part of it, but just utilizing the facilities that we have by offering more activities in the parks. Because a lot of the things that we would offer as an activity, there's the fee associated with offering it, whether it's a movie in the park or an evening swim lesson. You've got to pay an instructor, so you're charging fees, but you do have some cost associated with the new activities. But again, increasing utilization, increasing participation, offering more things for the community to participate in. I mentioned the movies in the parks, family and friends CPR and community first aid classes. That's something that we're already in conversation about with the fire department to do something once a month for the community, and hopefully that might even be a free opportunity as more of a service to the community to teach them those very important skills. Evening swim lessons, karate classes. We're doing a Christmas carnival in December. We're already planning that at the Jolly Jamboree. Home run derby, some summer programs, summer instructional sports camps and clinics, and some things that we hope to even offer maybe with the school system, with the Glynn County Athletics Department and some of the coaches and some of their staff, to hopefully offer some clinics in the summers and in the preseason of sports, and work with those guys to help offer some things at our parks. And with new programs, it's kind of like what Ed said, to reiterate what he said. we have to keep up with what's going on out there in the world. So, what's relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. So we have to always stay on that edge of looking to see what is the next thing that's out there and go with that. So, and with our population, shift of obviously there's more folks coming here to retire, making sure that we're also going to be offering things for that population as well. So this is just a short list, but our staff is very creative and has great ideas, and they bring them to the table, and we look at things like this all the time. We're always looking for ways to add new opportunities for the community, recreation opportunities. The out-of-the-box initiatives are the ones I guess we'll spend a little more time on, and Ed can chime in as needed, but this is something that actually our staff has been thinking about for a while. The first one, item number A, and we're calling it Athletics for All. Basically what this would be is a scholarship program for children in the county who maybe cannot afford the full price of a registration fee for a youth athletics program, that we could establish a sponsorship program for individuals and businesses to donate into an account that would be earmarked to cover the balance of registration fees for families that maybe couldn't afford it through, and again, criteria would have to be established, a policy would have to be established of how it would work, and right now what we're suggesting, but again, it's preliminary, so there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had, but is that the participant would pay $20, which is the same fee that the folks that live in the city of Brunswick pay through a fiscal sponsorship program that's already in place with the city of Brunswick. So residents of the city of Brunswick, they pay $20 to participate in our programs. The city of Brunswick covers the balance of those fees. The children that live in other areas of the county that might have some financial need, there is not a program in place right now, so this would cover that segment of the community that has a financial need that can't afford it. So those kids would also have qualifying criteria and could pay the $20 fee, and then the sponsorship would cover the balance of those.
And the sponsors would be individual citizens, it would be corporations, maybe a corporation wants to sponsor 50 kids or 20 kids. And we'd work something out using only first name with a thank you letter, that thank you for sponsoring me, I enjoyed it, I've had a great year in football or basketball, whatever it may be, to give recognition back. But there are a lot of people in the county that like to give money locally and see a direct impact of what they do in terms of giving money. And I volunteered to help on the program if this is approved by the committee and the commissioners say it's a good idea. To get support behind this, because I drive around the county and I look at areas and I say that they can hardly even afford to buy toothpaste. Is it much less? It would be terrible where they have to make the decision. 2 of our kids can do it, but you 2 have to wait till next year to participate. And we'd love to have a program, and with the great county staff, you can come up with the right criteria to manage that and to police it in the right way, so it's not abused. And I think it would be a great thing and fairly unique for a county to do that. So no kid goes, everybody has an opportunity to participate in the great services that you have to offer.
And it'd be a good way to engage the community and just build community support for what we're doing. So that's the first idea.
And on top of that, by the way, people that are it brings people in the capacity into it. Where we go back to your increasing participation, which also brings in dollars. So there's a financial positive to it too. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. Item B is expanding our memorial bench program. We currently have memorial bench programs in place for Neptune Park and Gascoigne Bluff Park. The way those programs are currently set up is it's cost for cost. So we estimate a cost, and the person who buys the bench pays that cost. And then if by chance the actual cost is less than what they paid, we will refund that difference. But perhaps revisiting those policies and then expanding it to other parks where maybe there's a fixed cost for the person purchasing the bench to pay. There's no refunding cost, and then you could use that extra as a way to generate revenue. And some of the locations we talked about might be Blythe Island Regional Park, North Glynn, maybe something near the dog park that could be specific for people with pets, things like that. There's a lot of other places that we could expand that program to. Selden Park might be a good place to put benches throughout the park and at a memorial. So, but we instead of it being something that we cover cost and we refund the person, the $500 that they overpaid for the cost of the bench, maybe that $500 is extra. So we're not talking about significant revenue, but yet something that would be a good revenue generator, and would also help in the long run as benches needed to be replaced or plaques needed to be replaced. If there's damage, you kind of have some money that's coming in to help support future maintenance of those benches as well. So, but the way the programs that exist are currently structured, we pretty much charge somebody whatever that actual real cost is for that bench, but maybe evaluating that to see if that's how we would want to continue to do it.
And it's a program we would market
Yes.
a bit, so that all the citizens would have that opportunity and say, I just had my favorite pet pass away, ours Wrigley.
Right.
I'd love to get a bench to or someone's relative or whatever. I think, but by getting the word out and marketing it through the newspaper and other ways would be, I think, really help this program a lot and bring in some revenues.
Yeah. And plus, there's only a fixed number of benches that are left at Neptune and at Gascoigne. So, once those run out, then if we don't look to other park settings or somehow we continue that program.
Also, when you're saying a fixed cost, majority of the time when someone give a memorial in memory of someone that's a memorial, they don't mind paying additional because,
Exactly.
beyond the cost of the item. So I don't think that'd be an issue. Saying we're gonna refund, we don't have to. I think that'd be fine.
That's right.
The last item on the list is talking about revisiting the county's approved fee waiver list for facility rentals. And I think it could have happened before this, but the first information that I've seen about an approved list of entities that are approved for fee waivers came about in about 2006. It was revisited back in 2013, and I think some entities were added to that. It's not a long list, but there's some entities that the Board of Commissioners just have decided as a group that we know we want to give these groups fee waivers, and so they're on the list. So what that means basically is whenever they host an event in the park or something, we don't charge them a fee to be there, and it's just known. You don't have to go bring it before the Board of Commissioners for a follow-up kind of a blessing of it because it's already on that list. So I think it would be good if we could revisit that list, because there may be some groups that have established since 2013 that could either be added to the list or just considered. Anytime somebody comes to us wanting a fee waiver, we bring it through the process, which is to the Finance Committee for consideration, and then they make a recommendation of whether or not to approve the fee waiver, and then it goes to the board for their final blessing one way or the other. So the purpose of putting this on here is basically, if their groups are maybe not groups that they have a blanket fee waiver, but maybe there's a group that does a specific event that we know every year is a good community-oriented event that's going to benefit the large majority of the community in some way. Maybe the Board of Commissioners may want to add that specific event to the list instead of a blanket for this organization, maybe, but when this organization does this activity, it's a good thing, and we want to. So this is a little more selfish than anything. So we as staff don't have to go through the Finance Committee and do it every single year or every time that it happens. It's just to revisit that list. And again, that's not necessarily revenue-based, but fee waivers are really important because when you start talking about all the fee waiver requests we get, if they were all approved, the department would never make any money. We would not be making 28% of our operating. We'd probably be making like 20%. So fee waivers are very important, and there are a lot of organizations that have good causes and good need, but do they all deserve fee waivers? We already have nonprofit rates that we already are giving to groups for certain, when they have certain events. Another thing that goes along with a lot of the rentals, because these are usually rental activities, is staff costs, and those are direct costs that the county has to pay for some activities, whenever there's an event, an indoor event, there has to be a staff person on site to monitor that. Some of the outdoor activities, not necessarily have a staff. It just depends on the size of it. But, maybe that's something that could be revisited too, is that although a group may get a fee waiver, maybe the staff costs are not waived, because that is something that we have to pay directly out of pocket to that employee or employees to be there for that. So that's kind of where we are with the recommendation, the preliminary findings and recommendations. And I'm sure you guys have some ideas or thoughts that could be added as well. But
Any other comment there?
No further comments.
Any
Thank
questions? Thank you. Any questions for
Yeah,
me?
just a couple. On the on item 1B, the open gym memberships for basketball, volleyball, and ping pong, is that going to require additional staff to handle taking those fees now?
it will.
Okay,
No,
so there's
sir.
already someone
And we
on
have a
there.
low
software system
participation.
we have a membership component that we can issue membership cards and stuff. No, sir, it won't take additional staff.
Okay. And do we know on item 2B, the family discount 10%, that would be just across the board for anybody, regardless of means, ability to pay? And do we know what percentage of kids are participating now, what percentage we have that are sibling groups?
That's a good question. I don't know that. Tiffany might know that because she has been involved with athletics for a while, so she may know that.
I don't have like a percentage,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of families, my family alone is 3 kids at a time.
Right,
There's
right.
a lot of families.
Right.
with multiple kids, and I very rarely, except when they're starting in the 3 to 4 year age group, if they're one sibling at a time, usually it's always up to these 2.
So,
Right.
so about time the student get to the 3rd or 4th grade, we'll work with more than one sibling.
Yeah. And the only reason I kind of brought that up is that we know if that's, if a large portion of the participants are getting that discount, is that going to offset the 5% increase that we're proposing across the board? And I mean, are we sure that's revenue still going to, that 5% increase is enough to cover this potential drop in revenue?
I think that it will, because I think it'll help encourage a family with multiple kids to get that
More
third,
kids to
fourth
join.
child participating. That's what I think. Because although 5 to 14 is our primary base, we actually start our youth sports at age 3.
Right.
With our little mini hoopers and little kickers and all that kind of stuff. So you're really, we just didn't happen to gather data on populations for that age group. But we actually start, and then in some of our sports, we actually go up to age 17.
And we'll do this review each year, so if something's out of whack, we'll adjust it, and this isn't large enough that's going to bankrupt the county.
Right, yeah.
But it's a good question.
And the most expensive athletic program that we offer is football. Tackle football is $66. So, child 1 would pay the $66 fee. If another child is paying, they would just get $6.60 off if it was a 10% discount. But again, you could establish an actual dollar amount where it's $5 off or something like that. So most of our sports are probably around $48. So if they're paying, 10% is $4.80. It's not a huge chunk, because the fees that we currently charge for our athletics programs definitely cover the costs as far as officials and uniforms and things like that. So,
Okay.
So I don't think it would have a significant impact to do something like that.
And then I don't want to go too deep into the weeds here, but on the benches, the 4B,
We have one in your name, by the way.
I'm just throwing this out there. There may be a thought that, even because these are basically permanent, as I understand it, I think we definitely want to be, getting more than just the cost of it, just because, they're getting the benefit for years and years to come. And they may even want to look into, after a period of, 20 years or something, you have to kick in another fee, or it might get replaced with someone else, just because, there are going to be maintenance costs involved. And I don't know if we have a way of going back to the person saying, hey, can you pay for the
If a
upkeep
bench
on
is
this?
damaged or it needs to be removed because it's just in such poor shape, I think the benches at Neptune, I think, have a 10-year warranty on them. The ones that we're doing at Gascoigne, I don't think they have that long of a warranty. But my understanding, because since I've been here since September 17, we've not sold a bench at Neptune, honestly, because the cost is estimated to be around $7,000, and that number kind of scares people. The benches are very expensive, but they have to be because they have to be weatherproof. Those benches are a little more, or a different quality, different vendor, but the ones at Gascoigne are not so much, not as much. But my understanding is when one of those benches has failed and needs to be removed or damaged by a tree or something like that, that the county does not replace them. It's not like we are replacing those benches. If we will remove the plaque off of the bench and get it back to the family if we can. But as far as the county then shelling out the money to replace that bench, that is not how we do it. So it would have to go back to that person to repurchase a bench.
Okay.
I think that the process, and if we have time for this next month before our next meeting, before we have to file a report with the commissioners, is we'll go through and set the fees, relook at them to make sure they're set, get a little bit more talking to the vendors, maybe getting some quotes on the bench so we can, get a great quote, great price, and hopefully bring in more revenues. But on all these, and also hear from county staff, Catherine and Alan and so forth, if they think some fees are too high or too low, just to come back this meeting next month with a final report. We won't have anything as long as this, but just bullet points where we'd set the rates, what the bench program would look like. Is that okay, Lisa?
Sure.
I think that's the best way. So
we,
because we've got to make a decision on this, so unless you all have some further input between now and our next meeting, we'll put these in stone and we'll get the bench program going, and we'll put a little bit more meat around the Athletics for All sponsorship program.
Sounds good.
Does that sound okay with the committee?
Sounds
Madam Chairman?
wonderful.
Agree.
Sounds wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank Paul and Lisa and Vicky and Ed for such a awesome reporting, going out and doing the research and bringing the results back to us. LaShonda Blue sent us an email this morning that she would not be able to attend, so we do not have an update on a brief on the EMS. And also, Mr. Hours gave us the community development, and Ron will be working with Ms. Thompson. And is there another area we need to look at? Was all complete that with us.
You could get in touch with me.
I think that was all. I mean, I know from the initial meeting I had recreation, courts, EMT/fire, and then, like I said, community development was added. So that's all I have.
Okay. So hopefully when we return on next month, Ms. Blue and Ron will have their report, and
We'll have the final recommendations.
Ed will do the final recommendation, Elisa, on the park and recreation. Do we need your findings in writing, Paul?
I don't know that we do if we're going to not suggest anything.
We don't, okay, so we just could do an oral presentation to the county commissioners, okay?
Yeah, what I would recommend is probably just a basic PowerPoint presentation, kind of going through each little area. I mean, Paul's slide would say that, we don't recommend, we reviewed this, but we don't see any recommended changes. Ed and Lisa, obviously, they've kind of fleshed some things out a little bit more. So
Yeah, we'll do that.
be a little bit more robust.
You've got me for another month, Lisa, so.
And then, and just depending on how the other reports come out, I would imagine, just kind of, bullet point items of things that you would want to adjust.
And we may have one or two extra things that we just couldn't bring up now because we haven't
Doing research.
legal doing research on it.
Right.
Okay.
We'll present that next month too. But we're pretty much done. It's just putting things in stone.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we adjourn? And our next meeting will be March
18th will be the
18th
third Wednesday.
at 9:00 a.m. We will get with Ms. Blue and see can we get a briefing on that, and if she needs some assistance. Since Paul and I don't have a department area, we will work with her to see can we get that information rolling. That makes sense?
Sounds good.
Okay. And for the EMS, we speak with whom?
Chief Randy Jordan.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, this meeting is adjourned until March
Thank you.
18th at 9:00 a.m.